welcome back once again to the Imaginary Gallery. It is TJ, your host. We are wrapping up this section of Lundy Bancroft's wonderful book, Why Does He Do That? Inside the Minds of Angry and Controlling Men, on the subject of the abusive person and addiction. Next section is called Substances as Weapons of Abuse. Then he goes into a story about Oscar and Ellen. Oscar and Ellen were dining in a restaurant. Tension was building during this meal because of several relationship issues, mostly related to Ellen's complaints of mistreatment by Oscar. Oscar, on the other hand, insisted that Ellen's complaints were all caused by her own hypersensitivity and her desire to control him. Ellen was pinning her hopes for their relationship on persuading Oscar to deal with his alcohol problem. He had agreed at one point earlier in the relationship that he was indeed drinking just a little too much and had maintained sobriety for 9 whole months. His abusiveness towards her actually had not improved during this time, but she didn't see any other strategy to get him to change. The argument at the dinner that night focused on his economic abuse of her. Specifically, he had taken out $4,000, virtually the entirety of their savings, from their joint bank account and had bought an old BMW for her, in quotes. Ellen was furious that she hadn't been consulted, all the more so because she was pregnant with their first child, and she wanted the security of having a little bit of savings to fall back on. Oscar responded by outdoing her anger and snapping with clenched teeth. "You never appreciate anything I do for you! Nothing's ever good enough for you! You just nagging bitch! Bitch! Bitch!" He then immediately ordered her a cocktail because he knew it would bother her. As soon as the waitress brought her drink, he looked Ellen in the eye and downed it in 3 gulps, and then quickly ordered another. He set out to make himself rapidly intoxicated, and he did. Ellen was then afraid to leave the restaurant with this creature because she'd been through numerous occasions on which he'd combined alcohol and rage in a volatile mix that led to raised fists, pounded walls, thrown objects, and horrifying threats, which left her cowering and trembling, terrified. Now, among Bancroft's clients, he says he's encountered numerous other ways that these people have used substances as weapons, including stomping out in fury to go driving while drunk because he knows it'll cause her to become upset and worried. This type of maneuver is particularly powerful if the couple has kids and the family is dependent upon this man for the income and so on, forcing her to assist him in running and or dealing drugs, thereby putting her at risk of serious legal consequences, which he can use to control her further. Bancroft says that a large percentage of ladies who are in prison for drug and alcohol-related charges or for minor economic crimes such as forging checks are only serving time for crimes that they either did directly or indirectly instigated by their abusive partner. Isn't that sweet? During periods when he is sober or clean, threatening to return to alcohol or drug use if she doesn't do what he demands or obey his orders, or claiming that her constant challenges of him are threatening his sobriety, blaming her for problems in his life that are really caused by his own goddamn addiction, pressuring and manipulating the partner into becoming involved herself. Then he'll use her addiction to increase his power over her and then get other people to disbelieve her reports that he's abusive. This tactic is particularly common when the abuser has a substance abuse problem himself, since he doesn't want his partner to be able to hold anything over him. But Bancroft has also had clients who kept their partner's substance involved while staying sober or using substances only moderately occasionally themselves. Shane and Amanda. In one of Bancroft's cases, an alcoholic lady named Amanda had entered sobriety several times, but her husband, Shane, would sabotage her progress every time by ridiculing her for being dependent on AA, telling her she was so weak for not being able to stay away from the drink on her own without a crutch. He would also go out and buy beer and say, "I just want to have a few on hand in case some friends come over," but he never seemed to drink them. They would just sit in the refrigerator and in the cabinet, tempting her, and finally she would end up succumbing. Amanda eventually went to a detox center and didn't tell Shane where she was going, knowing that if she spoke with him, she was likely to give in to the temptation to get back together with him. Shane left no stone unturned in his efforts to find out where exactly she was and to get a message to her. As of Bancroft's last contact with this case, she had succeeded in staying away from this creature and as a result had regained custody of her kids, which his abuse and her drinking had caused her to lose. Mutual reinforcement of addiction and partner abuse is the next part here. Bancroft tells you to notice that when a man uses drugs as a weapon, he ends up contributing to his own problem with the substances. Thus, partner abuse can feed the problem of addiction, and not just vice versa. They are two separate issues, neither of which causes the other, but which they do help to keep each other stuck. A man's abusiveness strengthens his denial of his substance abuse problem, as he can blame all of his life difficulties on the partner. His negative attitudes towards her allow him to easily dismiss concerns she may raise about his addiction. At the same time, the addiction fortifies his denial of his abusiveness, and he uses the substance as an excuse and as a weapon. Bancroft then mentions other addictions. He says he's worked with clients who have been addicted to cocaine, gambling, heroin, and prescription drugs. Several have also claimed to be sex addicts. But Bancroft does not buy this self-diagnosis from abusive men for reasons that he's covered previously under the player. Any addiction can be a financial drain on a couple, contribute to the man's secretiveness, and encourage him to use the partner as a scapegoat. An abusive person's addiction does not cause his abuse, but it does make the partner's life even more painful and complicated. Entitlement and addiction. An abusive person typically believes that his use or abuse of substances is none of the partner's business, no matter how this addiction may lead him to abuse the partner economically because he pours money into the substance and or has trouble holding down a job, no matter how burdened she may be with the household responsibility because he's out partying all the time, no matter how much worse he may treat her while he's under the influence of his drugs. He nonetheless feels entitled to use the substance of his choice. If she criticizes him for this as being selfish or confronts him with the effects that his partying is having on her life, he will feel justified in calling her a bitch, a nag, or labeling her, "You're being controlling." In short, irresponsible use of alcohol or drugs is another one of the privileges that the abusive man may award himself, and he may use psychological or physical assaults to punish the partner for daring to challenge this. Substance abuse blocks self-examination. While being addicted to substances does not cause a person to become abusive, it does ensure that the abusiveness remains in effect. Bancroft has yet to see a substance-abusing client make significant and lasting improvements in its treatment of the partner unless he simultaneously deals with the addiction. In fact, he would only give an alcoholic or drug addict about 2 months to get itself into recovery. And if it doesn't, he dismisses it from the program. He doesn't want to give the partner false hopes, nor does he want to waste the program's time. Facing up to a problem with partner abuse and changing it is a profoundly complex and uncomfortable process that requires consistent commitment over a very long period of time. It takes tremendous courage for a man to be honest with himself, to reevaluate his ways of thinking about his partner, and to accept how much emotional injury he's caused her. No addictive substance abuser is willing or able to take on this task. Thus, although recovery from addiction is not sufficient to bring about change in a person's abusiveness, it is a necessary prerequisite. Only if he's willing to address both problems, and he's had a number of clients who have gotten serious about becoming both sober and respectful, can he or she stop being a source of pain and distress to this poor partner. Bancroft then gives us some key points to remember. Drugs and alcohol cannot make an abusive person out of a person who's not abusive. Even when intoxicated, abusive people continue to make choices about their actions based on their beliefs, attitudes, habits, and their self-interests. The primary role that addiction plays in partner abuse is an excuse. Abusiveness and addiction are two distinct problems requiring separate solutions.
I am the Narcopath, and you ain't. I'm here to give another confession. Imagine that. I'm getting tired of having to do all these, but I figured I might as well have some fun while I'm at it.
When I first met you, I'd scoped you out in advance. Because there are only certain kinds of people I'll go for. For example, I could never go for one like me. Are you kidding? We'd be scamming each other and conning each other from here to the end of eternity. I don't need that. I need somebody trusting and vulnerable, which is what you were. Plus, I knew you had high moral character, so I knew you'd be safe. I wouldn't have to worry about you doing the kind of crap that I do, which would be picking up multiple dates, lying to all 10 of them. I knew I wouldn't have to worry about that with you. However, I also had a built-in insurance policy for myself. I'm smart. When we started to date, and I insisted all the time that, oh no, I don't talk to any other boys but you, and you'd come across things in my home or in my phone book or whatever, you'd find other boys' names, or other boys may call or stop by when you were around. Every single time that happens, I told you it was just a friend. Oh, it's somebody from church. Oh, it was somebody from my childhood. Whatever the case was, every time there was never any kind of fishy reason for the person coming over, but you continuously acted, as I called it, paranoid. Thanks to the psychology books I looked at, I learned a word called projection. So, despite the fact clues were left everywhere that I was up to no good, especially that one note you saw with the hearts on it, I just told you, oh, he puts hearts on every note. It don't mean nothing. The more you question me, the more I used my term. It's like, honey, you're projecting. I think maybe you're seeing someone else. You're dating someone else. And that sure shuts you up for at least a while. Because every time you expressed your concern, I'd come back with that and say, I have never lied to you ever. I have never cheated on you or even looked at anyone else. You keep saying this. You're obsessed. You must be dating someone. Who is it? Who is it? And I acted all dramatic and it got you into tears. And that was music to my ears.
I told TJ I was running out of stuff to tell you people.
And he reminded me, he brought me one of the old notes that one of my exes left me, which happens to be you. So today is your lucky day. Once I committed myself to you forever, and you eventually found out I was seeing somebody else behind your back with full intention of leaving you for that person. I know that must have done something to you. It's not my fault that it bothered you, but in the note you wrote me, though, before, one of your questions was, how could I live with myself and do what I'm doing to you? Well, honey, the answer is quite fine, thank you. You see, I know I told you were the one. I told you were the only one forever. I told you there's never been anyone else like you and all that. Well, honey, those are standard words I use for all my targets. How do you think I keep them as long as I do? If you need to know the truth, all I needed you for was like I call my anchor. I needed some stability so I could have like a regular source of the stuff I need called supply. That didn't stop me from looking out for other partners for the future. That's all behind your back. That's all outside your compartment. I told you that I don't look at other people. Periodically accused you of doing it. But the point was, I'm always looking. And if I got you and marry you, I'm looking. I'm looking at everybody. I'm always looking for the next best target. Well, I happened to find one. It's just a little bit better than you. So I had to simply make the switch from you to him. And you acted like I was so heartless. Honey, to me, it's all just business. I found a better business partner. Look at it that way. Quit trying to take it all personal. And the tears you shed, I always thought that was pathetic. But get over it. But then I thought,
You're not as smart as I am, so that's your problem.
one thing you need to work on is your paranoia. You always thought I was out with this guy or that guy, and most of the time I was, but still, you don't need to ask about that stuff. I figured you were probably out with other chicks, so it's even. I just don't tell you about it. Yes, I swore it was the truth, there was no one else, but those are just words. Besides, I figured you were doing the same thing. So when I came out pregnant, and you were sterile, well, it must have been immaculate. But you didn't buy that, so I quickly left town. I aborted the fetus and gave it to the queen. She ate it.